Sure. Here's your text translated into English without adding any extra words. I once worked the night shift at a transportation warehouse located far from residential areas, where activity mostly happened during the day. My task was to inventory goods, handle incoming and outgoing shipments, and ensure everything was properly arranged for the morning shift. Due to the nature of the job, I often worked alone in a vast space with only the cold fluorescent lights above and the humming air conditioner as company. At first, I felt quite comfortable because there was no supervision or pressure. However, over time, the prolonged silence, the towering rows of shelves, and the shadows lurking in corners began to make me uneasy. Every small sound like creaking wood, slight movement of boxes, or metal doors clanging startled me. Though I knew these were normal warehouse noises, I couldn't avoid feeling watched, especially on rainy or windy nights or during brief power outages. Once, I found the back door slightly ajar even though I was sure it had been locked earlier, prompting me to call the manager and lock the warehouse earlier than usual. Although I never encountered any real danger, working the night shift alone in the warehouse always made me stay highly alert and learn to trust my instincts. One night, like any other, while inventorying some packages in the west area of the warehouse, I suddenly felt a light breeze blow down the aisle between the shelves. This was strange because the entire warehouse was usually sealed tight at night to keep the temperature and security. I stopped and followed the breeze, which led me to the back door, where truck drivers usually enter and exit during the day. When I got closer, I noticed the large steel door was not fully closed as usual. It was only slightly open, enough for someone to slip through if they wanted. I immediately felt something was wrong. Two possibilities came to mind. Either the manager or someone from the previous shift forgot to lock it, or someone deliberately opened it. I stepped outside, looked around, but saw no sign of people or vehicles. The parking lot was completely empty and everything seemed quiet. I checked the lock and found no signs of tampering or damage. It seemed someone had simply forgotten to lock it, which sometimes happened, especially on busy delivery days. Still, the uneasy feeling lingered. I closed the door tightly, carefully turned the lock twice, then went back inside and tried to continue working as usual. However, since then, I kept feeling like eyes were watching me from afar, making me glance toward the door whenever I heard small noises. Nothing serious had happened. After locking the back door and returning to the warehouse, I tried to focus on unfinished work. But my mind was distracted by the unexplained unease. While inventorying in Area A, I glanced down the long corridor connecting Area A with the main storage, a narrow, long hallway lit by old, flickering fluorescent lights casting weak light. At that moment, I briefly saw a faint shadow passing at the far end of the hallway. I was startled, stood up straight, and stared in that direction, but only saw the empty, unusually silent space. Maybe I'm just imagining things, I told myself, trying to calm down. However, about 10 minutes later, while bending down to stack boxes again, I saw the shadow again, this time clearer, as if someone had just walked across the hallway within my sight. I put down the pen and quickly walked to the end of the hallway, heart pounding. I scanned every corner and shelf, but saw no one. The air felt colder than usual, and even though no doors were open, I felt a breeze brush my neck. The feeling of being watched became obvious, like someone was standing behind me, observing every move. I decided to check the whole warehouse again. Though my rational mind told me I was only haunted by invisible fears, my instinct urged me not to ignore these strange things. I returned after thoroughly inspecting the storage area without finding anyone or any signs of unusual activity. Trying to dismiss the strange feeling, I went back to the workstation near the entrance of Area B. Holding the pen to mark the inventory sheet, my eyes focused on the list, but my mind still lingered on the shadowy figure in the silent hallway. I sighed and told myself to finish the job soon to leave. Just minutes after sitting down, a loud clang startled me. It sounded like metal striking the steel shelves. The noise came from deep inside the warehouse, in Area C, where heavy boxes were stored and few people went. I stood up quickly, heart racing, staring toward the sound's direction. Everything became silent again, as if nothing had happened. I hesitated whether to check again when this time A series of soft knocks rang out. Knock, knock, steady and slow. The knocks were not loud, but echoed in the warehouse's stillness, piercing my ears and heart. It didn't sound like accidental contact with goods. It had rhythm and intent, as if someone was deliberately trying to get my attention. I felt a chill run down my spine. The feeling of being watched was no longer fleeting, but pressed heavily on me like an invisible yet real weight. The fluorescent lights flickered above, but didn't make me feel safe. I grabbed the flashlight from the table, deciding to check once more, with heightened alertness and growing fear inside. Unable to bear the oppressive tension, I decided not to stay any longer. Heart pounding, I ran straight out the main door, leaving behind the flickering lights and silent rows of shelves. Outside, the cold late-night wind hit my face, sharpening my senses. I pulled out my phone and called the police, voice trembling but clear enough for them to understand it was not a joke. Less than 10 minutes later, 2 police cars arrived. They asked me to wait outside while they inspected inside. I stood by one officer, eyes never leaving the steel door where they disappeared. Less than 5 minutes later, one of them shouted on the radio, requesting backup. My unease flared up. Finally, they brought out a man, a tall figure wearing dark clothes, face dirty, eyes evasive and looking very unstable. He was found hiding behind a tall shelf, nearly touching the ceiling, where the light barely reached. The police said it would have been hard to detect him without careful searching. That night, they extracted security camera footage from the warehouse. What they discovered horrified me. This man had appeared around the warehouse multiple times over the past week. He lurked behind boxes, hiding in shadows, only showing up when I worked alone. No one knew how he got in or what he was waiting for. But one thing was clear. His presence was no accident. I still get chills thinking about it. If I hadn't left the warehouse in time, no one knew what might have happened. A young student was working the night shift at his parents' laundromat, a job not too complicated, but requiring carefulness when working alone late at night. His daily tasks were cleaning, checking the washing machines and dryers, ensuring everything in the shop was always clean and tidy. However, one night, while working diligently, he suddenly noticed a man entering the shop. The man was not like the usual customers who came to wash clothes. He did not carry any bags, nor did he say a word to ask or request any service. Instead, he just walked quietly and somewhat oddly around the shop. The student tried not to pay much attention, thinking maybe the man was just lost or looking for something. After a while, the man suddenly left the shop, but instead of going far, he returned to stand right outside the glass door. The dim light inside the shop cast the stranger's shadow, creating a very eerie scene. He stood there, staring inside with cold eyes and an expressionless face, causing the student to feel a chill run down his spine. The feeling of safety in that small shop suddenly turned into an indescribable fear. Although he did not know the man's intention, the silence and strange attitude made the student unable to ignore it. He became more cautious, observing every movement around and staying alert for the rest of his shift. Since then, the night shift was no longer simple. Every time he looked out the glass door, he nervously wondered if that figure was still lurking around. This story taught him a valuable lesson about vigilance and not ignoring even the smallest unusual signs. A female student was working the night shift at her family's laundromat, continuously cleaning and checking the machines to ensure everything went smoothly. The shop was quite quiet at this time, only the sound of machines running and water dripping. However, the peaceful atmosphere suddenly changed when she unexpectedly noticed something very unusual at the front door. She looked outside and saw that the main door was tightly locked from the outside with a rough rope, as if someone deliberately blocked her from going out. Meanwhile, at the back of the shop, she heard strange noises coming from the storage room, where tools and less used equipment were kept. Rustling sounds, moving boxes, and small collisions echoed continuously, making her worried. Though her heart raced with fear, she tried to stay calm and moved towards the storage room to see what was happening. When she opened the door and looked inside, she discovered the strange man she had seen before, rummaging through boxes and toolkits. He had his back to her, unaware she was watching. Realizing the dangerous situation, the student felt a cold wave pass through her. She immediately understood the man had bad intentions, possibly trying to trap her inside and take control of the whole shop. She quickly went back to the front door and tried to open it, but the rope was tightly tied, making the door impossible to open. She knew she was trapped and needed to find a way to escape or call for help quickly. The panic overwhelmed her, but she kept calm, preparing to react if the man approached. This event left a deep impression, making her realize the danger of working alone and the importance of being prepared for unexpected situations. When realizing the front door was locked tightly with a rope, the female student felt her heart pounding wildly. The feeling of being trapped alone in the laundromat with a strange man made her panic, but also quickly become alert. She knew if she stood still, things would become much more dangerous. Therefore, she decided to find a way out through the back door, the only way left. She quietly stepped back, trying not to make any noise to avoid attracting the man rummaging in the storage room. Her heart beat fast, every step feeling heavy with fear. Passing a few meters, she reached the back door, still crouching low to avoid being seen. Her trembling hand tried to push the door gently. Fortunately, the door was not locked and could still be opened. Just as she escaped outside, the man's voice calling out her absence came from behind. He hurried to the back door, trying to pull it hard to lock it, but it was too late. She didn't hesitate, quickly ran away from the laundromat area, panting in panic but safe. The man also ran in the opposite direction, disappearing into the darkness of the late night. She quickly took her phone and called the police to report the incident. The feeling of escaping danger made her both relieved and shaken, but the event left a deep lesson about the importance of caution when working alone, especially at night. Since then, she never forgot the lesson to always stay calm, stay alert for danger, and know how to find an escape route in unexpected situations. A young data entry worker worked at a small company renting the top floor of a large office building. His job was usually processing data, entering information, and performing many small tasks outside his official responsibilities. Despite the low salary and unimportant position, he tried his best, especially since this was his first job after graduation. After official working hours, when other floors became empty and employees left, he was often assigned to stay late and work alone. His colleagues and managers had all gone, leaving him alone on the fifth floor, the top floor of the building. The loneliness and silence made him both able to focus, but also created unease, especially as the lights dimmed and darkness settled. He knew he had the lowest salary in the company, so being forced to work overtime without asking was common. Every night when others left, he patiently finished the assigned tasks, though sometimes he felt tired and pressured to prove his responsibility. Despite occasional feelings of being monitored and great stress, he tried to stay calm and focused. The top floor, where he worked late, was quite large and rarely passed through, creating a very isolated and quiet space. This made him sometimes feel watched or hear strange noises, making late-night work more tense. However, he remained determined to work hard, hoping for future promotion opportunities. One late night, when the building was almost dark and no one was left but him, he still diligently sat at his desk to finish unfinished work. Suddenly, in that quiet space, he heard strange noises echoing from the end of the corridor, the sound of a door opening lightly, and the door leading to the stairs and storage room at the back was slightly ajar. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine. This was extremely unusual because this door was usually locked tight and rarely opened after working hours. He tried to stay calm, quietly stood up, and observed carefully from his spot. The weak light from the computer screen could not clearly illuminate details in the distant darkness, but the urge to check made him restless. He stepped lightly, trying not to make noise to avoid alerting whoever was there. Every step echoed in the empty room, making the atmosphere heavier and stifling. When he approached, he crouched to look through the crack of the open door, seeing no one inside, but the feeling that something was wrong made his heart beat faster. Although he had not detected anything specific or dangerous, the growing unease made him unable to continue working normally. He decided not to stay alone any longer, preparing to leave the office, calling relatives, and even considering calling the police for safety. Since then, he always became much more cautious whenever working alone at night, never ignoring the smallest signs of potential danger around him. Knowing it was late and only a few tasks left to complete, he tried to concentrate to finish quickly, hoping to leave the office as soon as possible. However, during that time, an uncomfortable and eerie feeling crept into his mind, the feeling of being watched. Every time he looked up, he saw the empty room with no one around, but the fear did not lessen. This feeling made him unable to focus long, constantly glancing around. Soon after, an unexpected incident occurred. All the lights suddenly went out, leaving only the faint light from the computer screen illuminating a small area around his desk. In the enveloping darkness, the silence was broken by slow footsteps echoing from the other side of the room, steps gradually getting closer. The footsteps showed no sign of haste, but carried a sense of deliberate stalking, making the atmosphere dense and oppressive. He felt his heart pounding, his whole body stiffened as if frozen by fear. In a split second, reason told him to escape immediately. Without hesitation, he stood up and rushed from his seat, trying to keep balance in the dark and find the nearest exit. The footsteps seemed to speed up in pursuit, increasing his panic. Running down the empty corridor, he felt chased by something invisible, only clearly hearing the footsteps and heavy breathing. Finally, when he stepped out of the building, he sighed with relief, his heart still pounding. From that event, he never wanted to work alone at night again, always alert to every unusual sign no matter how small. After he called the police and reported the incident, authorities quickly arrived at the building to investigate. They checked every corner of the office, especially the storage room, where he heard strange noises and where the suspicious man was suspected to hide. Reviewing security camera footage, police found that the man had pretended to have an appointment with a company renting an office in the building and had sneaked in since early afternoon, hiding in the storage room until the office became empty. During that time, he moved stealthily around the area to avoid detection. The man's true purpose remained unclear, and there was no sign that he or anyone in the office was harmed or had property stolen. However, having a stranger lurking in the private workspace made him and colleagues feel very worried and uneasy. After this event, he could not continue working in an environment where he always felt scared and unsafe. The decision to quit was not because of work responsibility, but entirely for protecting himself and his mental health. He felt lucky to have escaped that dangerous situation unharmed, but the memories of that terrifying night still haunted him and could not be forgotten. He also warned others to be careful when working alone, especially at night or in places with few people passing by. From then on, he began searching for new job opportunities, prioritizing safe work environments with better support to avoid similar scary experiences.